Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining me on Take a Spiritual Journey. Today is Wednesday, March the 25th, 2020. We are learning new ways to physically distance while connecting deeply, socially and spiritually. I am Reverend Robin Volker, Senior Minister of Unity of Gainesville in the Northeast Georgia area, here in the middle of a world pandemic, broadcasting live from our home studio. I'd like to do a shout out to a couple of people behind the scenes who make this possible. Patsy Yarborough is our social media consultant, and Rick Volker is the man behind the camera and the technology. But most importantly, a shout out to you for being curious and pushing that button to join this live session. I am so grateful that you're here. I'd like to begin with the Daily Word. The Daily Word is an international publication that has been in circulation for over 100 years, and it has a broad readership of hundreds of thousands of people across all denominations in many different languages and other countries. Today's word is renew, and the affirmation is I am refreshed and restored. That would be a good message for any day, but an especially good message for today. Peace and tranquility are qualities that are part of the spiritual blueprint that exists deep within my soul. When I feel discouraged or anxious, I remember that the love and peace of God are always with me. My thoughts have the power to renew my mind. Affirming peace by filling my consciousness with loving, calming thoughts leaves me feeling refreshed and restored. I continue to nourish myself with notions of peace that permeate my thoughts, words, and actions. I am sure to get quality rest, spend time in nature, and exercise my body. I also allow my mind to be renewed and revitalized through the power of prayer. And from my favorite Bible scripture, Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Let's pray. Sweet, sweet Spirit, we are so grateful to connect heart to heart and mind to mind across the airwaves. Although we may not be together in one room, we are together in our intention to celebrate and embrace our spiritual nature and to feel your loving presence in deeper and more passionate ways. We are excited that it is through the power of focused thought that we renew our minds. And help us to eliminate our thoughts of fear and lack, and to reestablish within ourselves a sense of balance and equilibrium, knowing that through your divine power moving in and through our lives, we are indeed renewed and restored. And so it is. Amen. Tonight, my topic I'd like to talk about is defining the undefinable, or defining the indefinable. That's how I actually said it in the ad. The inspiration for this Wednesday series comes from a textbook from Unity from the 1990s called The Quest. It was written by Unity ministers Richard and Alice Jafala. So if you were a student of Unity way back 30 years ago and you are familiar with the stories in The Quest, you may recognize some of those as we go through this Wednesday night series. The Jafalas tell a story of a tiny Italian village where a beautiful church stood. And as long as everyone could remember, people came from near and far to visit this church because inside there was a magnificent fresco called the Holy Family. It was painted on one of the walls in the church, and it was very beautiful to look at, very centering of spirit to be in its presence, and everyone loved this fresco. Unfortunately, one day in World War II, the village was bombed, and the church suffered great damage. The fresco was partially destroyed. Years later, after the war, the church was rebuilt. But here, where there once had been this beautiful fresco of the Holy Family, there was now only a portion of the painting left, and it abruptly butted up against this stark, plain, newly plastered wall. Saddened, the villagers looked near and far for someone who could restore the fresco, bring it back to the magnificence that it once had been, that their memories yearned for. So artists came in and they tried their hand, one after another, but they could not even begin to match the colors or the definition that had been in the magnificent painting. And then one day, an old man had heard about the damaged fresco, and he came to the church and sought out the priest and begged the priest to let him try his hand at repairing the fresco. The priest was hesitant to do that, and it took the old man several days to be able to talk the priest into giving him a chance. Finally, the priest consented and told him that he would have a couple of days to show whether or not he could do any good, and on the third day the priest would take a look and see whether or not the old man could continue. For 2 days, 2 long days, the old man worked in silence, and the priest paced the floor, anxious to see what was going on and to know whether or not the old man could actually help the painting, or was he going to harm it more than the other artist already had done. At the end of the third day, the priest made his inspection of the work, and he could barely believe his eyes. There was a small portion of the fresco completely restored to its original beauty, and he was amazed. So the old man was commissioned to restore the painting, and it took him several months to do so, almost a year. But when the painting was completed, the bells in the tower of the church rang out, and all of the villagers came, and their friends and family from far and wide came, and there was a big party and celebration as they enjoyed the beauty of the fresco returned to its original majesty. Someone asked the old man, "How were you able to accomplish what no one else could do?" And the man smiled and said, "You see, I was the one who originally painted the fresco, and so I knew how to restore it." There are a couple of things about that story that I'd like to point out to you tonight. One, when the fresco was completed and the villagers returned with joy and triumph to their church to celebrate and held a party. When we are past the danger of this pandemic, we will return to our churches, to our schools, to our workplaces, to our social outings with joy and celebration. I'd like to begin tonight by reassuring you that this situation that we are going through is temporary. It will not last forever. It will come, it will make its impact, and then it will go. And we too, like the villagers, can celebrate. We can be together, we can hug and handshake, and return physically to those things that we so enjoy. So I want to give you that little message of hope. The other thing that I want to call to your attention about this story is when the old man said at the end, I was the one who created the fresco, and I knew how to restore it. This is what God is like. God created all things, our entire world and beyond, into the universe, into the multiverses. And God can and will restore all that needs to be restored. Notice when I talked about God, I said this is what God is like. God is such a vast energy of life and creativity that we do not have words in our human languages to be able to define and to describe what is indefinable and undescribable. God is so vast and so unknowable in totality that we always end up finding things that God is like instead of being able to truly define what God is. Remember the story of the blind men who were placed around an elephant and asked to determine what it was that they were touching? And they could only touch the part of the elephant where they were placed. So the man who was touching the trunk of the elephant said, oh, it's a large snake. And the man who was touching the tail of the elephant said, oh, it's a rope. What are you kidding me? It's a rope. And the man who was touching the leg of the elephant said, this is a giant pillar of some sort. But the man who was touching the ear of the elephant said, oh no, it's a leaf. It's a huge leaf. So they were all mistaken. They only knew a part of what they were experiencing. We can each only know a part of God. And we only know God through our own experience. My experience of God will be different from your experience. And if I was to try to define it for someone, it would be different than how you would try to define it. There are as many different definitions and ways to explain God as there are people on the planet, because each and every one of us experience God in our own way. The artist Vincent van Gogh once said that the best way to know God was to love all things. And he really expressed that in his work. And I would suppose that that is a great analogy of how to know God, because the more that we love the creation of God, the more that we would know and understand what God was itself for having created those things. But even If we were able to love every single thing on the planet, we still would not be able to truly know all of God. Since God is greater than the sum total of all the parts that it has created, it's beyond our capacity to realize the vastness and immensity of this energy that created all life. We cannot know all the facets of God, but we can know some of them, and we can begin to know some of them very personally. We can know God as love, as peace, as joy. We can know God as abundance, as health, as prosperity, as strength, as power. Actually, the list is pretty long of the attributes that we could assign to God and the different ways in which we could come to know God. Jesus warned us that we cannot know God through our intellect. Really, the way to know this energy of life, this divine spirit, is through the intimacy of our hearts, the innocence and the intimacy of our hearts. It is only when we open our heart that we truly can know that which is indefinable. In Unity, we have some basic spiritual principles that we use in our lives every day. The first and foundation principle that we have is there is only one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life. God, the good, omnipotence. Let's break this down. There is only one presence. There's only one presence. There is only God. God is omnipresent. I'm going to talk about the omni words tonight, and I truly love them. They energize me and give me vitality and life when I just think about these omni words. God is omnipresent. That means God is all. God is everywhere. Nothing is outside of God. Not a single solitary thing. And another favorite saying is, there is no spot where God is not. God is actually more than omnipresent. God is omnipresence itself. When we say that God is omnipresent, we are using omnipresent to describe God. But when we say that God is omnipresence, we are saying that omnipresence is God. See the difference? So let's slow down and really let this percolate into our consciousness. If we embrace the fact that everything is a part of God, then we must admit that we are a part of God. That you and I are a part of God. If nothing can be outside of God, then we are in God. And God is in us. And more than that, wherever we are in our physical experience, God is present in that experience with us. So no matter what's happening in your life right now, God is present with you in that experience. God is not out there somewhere that you have to reach for or strive for or earn to be able to be a part of whatever God has to offer your life. It doesn't work like that. Wherever you are in your life, God is already there because God is omnipresence. I find this very comforting. In any time of trouble or trial, that idea of God's omnipresence has always brought me great comfort. There is no spot where God is not. The second quality I want to talk about is that God is omnipotent, all-powerful. This is another exciting omni word. Even more than being all-powerful, God is the power. Hear the difference again? More than being all-powerful, God is the power. Therefore, God is more than omnipotent. God is omnipotence. If God is perfect good in every place and has all the power, then there is no place where evil can work, or evil can even exist. It is you and I who decide how to allow God's power to be active in our lives. God is omnipresence and omnipotence. And the third omni word is omniscience. God also has universal knowledge. God is omniscient. God knows all things. But because God is actually the knowing, not possessing of the knowing, but the knowing itself, God is omniscience. The mind of God is universal and encompasses all intelligence. How could it be otherwise? And God's mind operates through us. That means that we, as humans, have access to this creative intelligence through the power of our minds. And it's really important during this health crisis to meditate on this idea. The solution and the problem are already matched in God's mind. It is humanity that must open to receive it. God doesn't have to figure it out because no virus exists in God. But humanity has to open its awareness to receive a download, so to speak, from the mind of God that will provide the solution. The solution has already been created. And we are to look for it and to receive it. And what the delay is that humans are looking in the expected places. And this virus is not playing in expected places. So we will know the solution when humanity rises to a higher level of thinking. And you and I can help make that happen. So let's recap. God is indescribable, indefinable. God does not have attributes. God is the attributes that we use to try to describe God. God is omnipresence. God is omnipotence. And God is omniscience. One God, one life, one all, one everything. God's power within you is available all the time. And your divine nature is to bring forth health and wholeness, love, peace, and joy, and all those attributes that we assign to God. Your divine nature is bringing that forth in your life. To experience deep connection with God, all we have to do is become aware of this greatness that is indefinable. So let's pause here to reflect and pray. Sweet Spirit, we join in heart, mind, and spirit with you at this time of reflection. We know that we can only experience you greater through our personal experience. So we pause to allow space in our minds for deeper understanding of you. Knowing you is a simple and natural process. It is the process of allowing. So we breathe. We open our minds and hearts as the energy of your allness infiltrates our being. We affirm there is only one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life. There is only one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life. There is only one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life. You, dear God, are omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience. And we desire to experience this in greater awareness. We recognize that God, you are all, you are everything, and you are good. With gratitude and appreciation for these truths, we are assured that you are creating in and through each of us to establish a better humanity. Let us breathe these truths deeply into our consciousness. God is all. God is everything. God is good. And so it is. Amen. Thank you for joining me to take a spiritual journey. Here we explore basic New Thought principles and strive to take them to a deeper level of understanding in our lives. If this message blessed you in any way, please jump over to unityofgainesville.org, where we will bless each gift, any gift that you are able to share with us. Join me tomorrow for Tea and Talk at 12 on Thursdays. And this will be a Zoom call where we will take the principles we talked about tonight and share them as if we were in class together, where you can talk about how you try to define the undefinable and describe the indescribable. For the Zoom login, please check Unity of Gainesville's Facebook events, or email or text me, Rev Robin Volker at gmail.com, for specific instructions. Sunday, I will continue my Meet It with Faith message. The title of the talk for Sunday is Allow Healing. I'm interested to see what that will look like. Always interested to see how it turns out. And Rick Volker and I are planning a surprise for you on Sunday. So come back and be with me again as we connect heart to heart and mind to mind, from where I am to where you are, knowing that we are a part of the omnipresence of God. Let's close with our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds me, surrounds us. The love of God surrounds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And so it is. God bless. I'll talk to you tomorrow on Zoom, and see you Sunday right here on Facebook.